Mel Robbins, Jay Shetty, Theo Vaughn, Stephen Bartlett have all built successful podcast brands. And in this video, I'm going to walk you through step by step on how to build yours today. You don't need a team of people to make a compelling podcast brand, and most of the podcasters you know have started from nothing. And while it may seem intimidating to do all the branding yourself, from your topic and niche to show title, artwork, descriptions, publishing, and more, I'm going to walk you through the entire process and tell you what I did for my podcast, which I publish every week, and we launched in the top 20 shows on Apple Podcasts. And there is one area that you should spend the most time developing, and we'll get to that in a minute. Now, number one, before we get to all the artwork and naming your show and episode titles, you have to understand your why. What is the purpose for you launching a podcast? Before you can decide what to measure, you need to decide why you're doing it. The reason why I started a technology podcast is because I felt there was still space for someone to bring technology news in a digestible format and one where we can entertain and educate people on a weekly basis. Before you ever think about measuring analytics and numbers, knowing your why will really help, especially in the early stages. Remember, growth is slow and consistency in the long game is really where it matters. Even for our show, you'll see that growth curve never really goes into a full hockey stick, especially with audio podcasting. So knowing why you're doing it will help push you through in those early days and build a successful brand. And as you think about the why, also consider, are you going for large numbers of downloads, or is the purpose a little different? Remember, there's many podcasts out there, and while some can grow very large and yours can too, maybe the purpose of yours is different. I've heard of real estate podcasts that just have a couple hundred downloads per episode, but the purpose is to find leads for their real estate business. And because they're hyper-local and everyone listening to that podcast is likely in the market and want to buy a house in that area, they have a successful podcast with just a few hundred downloads because the purpose is clear. And finally, as you think about your why, consider the Venn diagram between your passion and expertise. What are you passionate about? What do you love talking about? Do you have a co-host who loves it as much as you? And what is your expertise? What do you have experience in or knowledge, or what are you currently learning and want to share that journey with an audience? Whatever's in the middle of that Venn diagram of passion and expertise or learning is exactly where you should be when you think about your why. Number two, what's your angle? Meaning, not only do you need a topic or category, maybe business or comedy, but what is going to set your show apart from all the others? Why is someone going to listen to yours instead of the other many business, finance, comedy, or lifestyle podcasts? I would encourage whatever category you plan to be in, go to Apple Podcasts and Spotify, go to that category, whether it's business or true crime, and look at the shows that are already out there. Many topics are saturated, but that doesn't mean there's not room for new shows with a unique angle. And being unique could mean structure, release cadence, topics, guests, all of that. So look to see what's out there, especially in the top 100, and consider how you can differentiate with a different angle. Another way to think about it is, why should someone listen? Again, what value will they get from hearing or viewing your podcast? For ours, when it comes to technology, our tagline is technology news that matters, and so someone can understand it, whether they're really into tech and reading it every day, or just want to know the biggest news that's happening every week. And last point on developing an angle for your show, be opinionated. When you look at the most popular shows across any category, when there is decisive opinions, people saying what they believe strongly, people are drawn to that. They want to know that the voice they're hearing either has expertise or confidence in the area that they're covering. And while everyone might not enjoy that opinion or angle, you will draw a larger audience when you put yourself out there with confidence and strong opinions. Now, what about naming your show? We'll get to artwork in a second, but the name is something that most people will see right away, whether they're browsing in Spotify or if they see a show recommended here in Apple Podcast. That name will help give listeners an idea of what to expect. A key thing to remember about a name is make it easy to remember. I literally just saw this podcast for the first time called Deadheads, but that's a pretty good name. And the tagline, which might seem obvious, but is a nice reminder, it's a podcast about money. Make sure your podcast name fits the vibe and flow of your show as well. This Deadheads podcast, because that name is a little playful, I would expect the podcast to be playful, maybe even funny as well. And while you might see popular podcasts use the star's name in the title, like Amy Poehler or Rachel Maddow, unless you already have an audience built around your name and brand, use your podcast title to describe more what your show is about and try to come up with something catchy. Again, this is a show I've just heard about for the first time as I'm browsing Spotify, but Distractable, that's a pretty funny name. Again, the vibe with the artwork, I think I have a good idea this is going to be a fun or funny podcast when I click play. Also remember, you'll build your brand over time as you release dozens of episodes, even into the hundreds. The content, the video, the audio is going to start making the name take shape. And that content needs to be the focus anyway. So make sure the podcast shapes the name, not the other way around. And it's okay to rebrand too. One of my podcasts called Movies on the Side, we started out calling it The Exchange, which is really generic and doesn't have anything to do with movies. So we rebranded it with the artwork and the title, and while it's a small show, we really enjoyed doing it, and now the name reflects the content that we made. Now comes a big part of your show, the artwork. Your podcast artwork is going to be featured everywhere. It's going to be one of the first things people see in Apple Podcasts, and as people browse the Discover pages in Spotify, your artwork is going to be the most visible, even before your title and the description of your show. Ideally, try to be unique. See the other podcast artworks in your category. Again, go to Apple Podcasts, go to your category, let's say TV and film, see what's out there, and see if you can be unique, be different than what's already there. And if you can come up with iconic imagery, maybe even hiring a designer to do that, all the better. Also, as you think about color scheme and font, try to be colorful. You'll see bright colors actually stand out better than maybe darker or more muted tones. You'll see even here things that jump out like that pink artwork, this yellow. So try to go with some bold, bright colors for your artwork and see what it looks like on a phone, even at small sizes. You'll see here in Spotify, if I scroll these artworks, they're pretty small. A lot of text might not even be legible at this size, but you'll see the artwork. What does it look like on a desktop? And remember, most people are probably going to be seeing it on their mobile device. The Vergecast has one of my favorite pieces of artwork, super unique, you don't see much like it, and it's bright colored. And I will say, if your brand is based on you as the creator individually, it's okay to put your face on the artwork, but also think about large fonts or other things that can make the artwork stand out from other shows. Finally, after naming your show and creating artwork, you will need a description. While the description isn't very visible, it will appear everywhere, including on Spotify, and less so on Apple Podcasts. You actually have to scroll to the bottom of the show page, and then you see the description or the about text. But think of this section as an elevator pitch for your podcast. So while I love the artwork and title of this show called Distractable, the description is actually a little vague. It says a space to have thoughtful discussions about funny or out there or interesting stories from everyday life. Really broad, really generic, and honestly, after reading that description, I'm a little less inclined to listen. And maybe this podcast is really centered around the host personality. But for your show, think about that description as an elevator pitch. Here's the Diary of a CEO description, which he talks about his bona fide, basically a resume for why you should listen to his interviews with CEOs and notable people. For our show about technology, I share our history covering the tech news, both me and my co-host, where we came from, which can help build credibility and starts building that trust early on in your listener. Now, this next tip might be one of the most important aspects of branding your show. After the artwork, title, and description, your episode titles are a huge deal. Not only is the title one of the first things people see, like for instance, here on Spotify, that title is actually shown first before the show name, larger than the artwork. Having titles that build curiosity and make someone want to click and listen or watch is a big deal. That also goes for Apple Podcasts and the audio-only version of your show as well. Not all of your followers will listen to every episode, so making the title something that is interesting, that your audience wants to hear, is very important. So spend time crafting that title and not just use inside jokes or short titles that someone outside the podcast might not know what it means. And the title has the most to do with search engine optimization. For instance, searching for a topic, your podcast might come up in search results. Here's actually the video version of our show, and the audio version in Apple Podcasts can show up in search results. This is on page 1 of Google. Not to mention, when you're publishing your podcast on YouTube, packaging is a huge deal. And when I mean packaging, it's the title and thumbnail together. So having that compelling thumbnail or artwork with a title that is both searchable and drives curiosity and makes people want to click is one of the key areas to focus on. Now, depending on your show, your strategy might be a little different. For instance, if you have a podcast where the guest is actually the driving factor, and I think of shows like Good Hang with Amy Poehler, where the guest is the whole deal, the entire podcast episode title is just their name. I would look more at Jay Shetty's strategy here, where guests are the main thing, and you see the guest name being first in the podcast title, but he also talks about what the episode is about, which I think is a great strategy. Put the guest name first and foremost, that's what people will see first, and then what that episode is about. Or if you're more of a story-based podcast like the true crime show Morbid, then maybe the title is a series like part 1, 2, 3, or just a very clear topic that might interest people. Think about the new listener. If someone's never listened to an episode of your show or seen it anywhere, if that episode title is the first thing they see, and it likely will that potential listener want to click play and find out what's behind that title? I love the titles of this podcast, Work Life with Adam Grant. Again, the value is right there. How to say no. And here's a guest name with the topic on saying yes to what scares you. This is a great quick way of sharing what the value will be for that episode and sharing the guest name all at once. Right, you have your show name, your artwork, your description ready. You have your topic or niche and some episodes, making sure those episode titles are attractive and curiosity driving. And now it's time to distribute your podcast. Now, if you're doing an audio-only podcast, you want to make sure you're in all the apps. So using a podcast host like Transistor, you can go to distribution and you want to submit your RSS feed to Spotify, to Apple. Those are the two big ones. And your host should also handle submitting your show to Amazon Music, third-party apps like Pocket Casts, and just make sure you're everywhere. But if you have a video component to your show, which we highly recommend for discoverability and reaching a new audience, YouTube is #1 priority for distributing your podcast. You want to upload every full-length episode to YouTube, and a special feature in YouTube is add those full-length episodes to a playlist, and then you can mark that playlist as a podcast. This way it actually shows up in YouTube Music, episodes will be reverse chronological, and your show could be featured on the dedicated podcast tab here in YouTube. I've actually seen my shows appear here a number of times, which again is another avenue of discoverability. Plus, with that video, I would encourage you to post short-form content, clips of your podcast, engaging moments, funny moments, or super informative moments. And I post shorts every day we don't publish a full episode. And as you can see, it varies widely. Some will get 1,000 views, some a couple hundred. But the point is to be consistent, and then you can repurpose those vertical videos on apps like Instagram Reels. I share the same clips from YouTube Shorts here to Instagram, and we also publish them to our TikTok page. And again, you'll get a wide variety of view counts, but even with a few followers, we only have 64, some clips can go viral, reaching thousands of people. And even if you just get a few new listeners, it's worthwhile. And promote those episodes even on text-based social media like Threads. Here we have the links to Apple, Spotify, and YouTube. And I'll even post those vertical video clips here on my personal social media as well. Then take that same full-length video episode you're uploading to YouTube, and you want to share that on Spotify. Once your episode is in your Spotify for Creators account, you can upload that full-length video, and your audience can switch between audio and video seamlessly. Plus, uploading your video to Spotify means Spotify will actually clip your content and put that in Discover and search feeds for you automatically. I didn't make this clip, Spotify did this with the captions, and now that will be put in front of people looking for tech news shows in Spotify. Now, I know it can be intimidating to create that much content all by yourself, but you can use Riverside's Magic Clips, which here, once you record with Riverside, I'll click Magic Clips, choose how long I want the clips to be, apply my branding automatically, and even focus on a speaker, and in just a few seconds, I can have multiple vertical videos generated for me automatically. And these videos will automatically have animated captions applied, their vertical format ready to post on Instagram Reels or YouTube Shorts, and I can generate multiple batches of Magic Clips focused on different topics or speakers. Then you can share these everywhere. Remember, you can record, edit, and export your video and audio from Riverside for free. Check the first link down in the video description, try it for free today, and use the AI tools to help you repurpose your content. Now that you have distribution down, a few other key points for building your podcast brand long term. Quality is important. Again, whether you're doing audio only or video and audio, that's why I've recorded with Riverside, because you get pristine local recordings for you and your remote guests, and it will look great everywhere, YouTube, Spotify, and for your audio listeners. By the way, if you need tips on building a podcast setup, maybe upgrading your USB mic or camera, we have videos on that too. I'll link one above here and it'll be in the description. Also, as you're building your episode library, remember that topics and guests matter. Make sure you stay in your niche or your topic or tangentially related. And if you're inviting guests, make sure that they're going to be providing value to your audience, just like you do in your regular episodes. And if you can land that big guest, some of their audience might listen to your show, and that's a great way to grow your audience and expand your reach. Also, you can be a guest on other podcasts, which will also expose you to a whole new podcast audience, and hopefully they'll look for your show after your appearance. So be a great guest as well as a great host. And also think about building your podcast as a community, not just a one-way street. We actually built a free community using Circle for our podcast. We post every episode, and then people can discuss, leave comments, and even start their own discussions here in the Circle community. The more connected your audience, viewers or listeners, feel to you as the creator and host, the more they're likely to share the show, be an ambassador to someone else who might love to hear or watch it. And it's something that really sets podcasting apart from other mediums. It's not just a one-way street, it is a true community. And finally, remember, consistency is key. If you've not reached 100 episodes of your podcast, don't worry about audience size or metrics, you're just getting started. Like I mentioned before, podcasting is a long game, especially those audio-only listeners. It can take a while to grow that audience, but once they find you and they love your content, they'll stick around. When you hear people talk about their favorite podcasts and top shows, many times it's shared with a lot of passion and the urgency that you need to hear this. That's what you want people to say about your podcast. So be consistent, communicate with your audience, maybe start an email newsletter. This way you can reach your audience even outside the podcast, and be active on social media or whatever platforms your audience finds themselves. Now, we have a bunch of videos on the Riverside channel all about growing your community, monetizing, and more. So definitely subscribe to the Riverside channel here and hit that like button. If you have any questions about branding your podcast or anything podcast, leave the comments below. I answer every comment personally, like for real. And if you want to learn more about monetizing your show once you begin building your brand, I'll put a video I did on that right up here. And again, if you want to upgrade your setup and maybe add video, but you're not sure where to begin, I'll put a video on that right up here. Thanks for watching. We can't wait to see the podcast you create.